I didn't need a tutor. That's the thing I keep coming back to, even now, 6 months after everything changed. I was pulling a solid A- in advanced statistics, had been crushing every assignment, every quiz. But when Marcus Chen offered to help me study after I made some offhand comment about finding the regression analysis confusing, I said yes anyway. I still don't know why. Maybe it was the way his eyes lit up when he talked about probability theory, like numbers were poetry instead of torture. Maybe it was because he smelled like coffee and cedarwood, and I wanted to know what that combination would be like up close in my small apartment, without the buffer of 20 other students between us. That first night, he showed up at my door with 2 textbooks, a worn notebook, and a bag of Thai takeout. I remember standing there, holding the door open, thinking this was probably a mistake. My apartment was tiny, barely enough room for my desk and bed, and now Marcus was going to see how I lived, the pile of laundry I hadn't gotten to, the dishes in the sink. But he just smiled, kicked off his shoes like he'd been there 100 times before, and said, "I hope you like pad thai. I got extra peanuts on the side because some people are weird about peanuts being mixed in versus on the side, and I didn't want to assume." We didn't study much that first night. We ate on my bed because I only had one chair, and he told me about growing up in Vancouver, about how his parents wanted him to be a doctor, but he'd fallen in love with data science instead. I told him about my small town in Oregon, about how I'd never really fit in there, how college felt like finally being able to breathe. The statistics textbook sat unopened between us, a pretense we both seemed happy to ignore. When he left around midnight, he said, "Same time Thursday?" And I nodded, even though I knew I should probably say no, should probably protect myself from whatever this was becoming. Thursday became our night. Then Thursday and Monday. By the third week, he was coming over 4 times a week, and we'd developed this routine. He'd bring food, always something different, always something he thought I'd like. I'd clear off my desk, we'd spread out our materials, and for about 20 minutes, we'd actually look at statistics. He'd explain concepts I already understood, and I'd pretend to have breakthroughs I'd had weeks ago in class. Then, inevitably, we'd drift. He'd mention a movie he'd seen, I'd counter with a book I'd read, and suddenly it would be 11:30, and we'd have accomplished nothing except learning everything about each other. I started looking forward to those nights with an intensity that scared me. I'd clean my apartment on study days, actually do my dishes, light a candle I'd bought specifically because the girl at the store said it smelled masculine and welcoming. I'd change my shirt twice, trying to look casual but not sloppy, put together but not like I was trying. My roommate Jake noticed, obviously. One morning over coffee, he said, "So this study buddy of yours, is he actually helping, or is this something else?" I'd gotten defensive, said of course he was helping, said my grades proved it. Jake just raised his eyebrows and went back to his cereal, and I hated that he could see right through me. The thing about Marcus was that he was impossible to read. He'd lean close when explaining a concept, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating off his skin, close enough that I'd lose track of what he was saying entirely. But then he'd pull back, casual, like proximity meant nothing. He'd laugh at my jokes with his whole body, touch my shoulder when he was making a point, let our knees press together when we sat on my bed. But he'd also talk about girls he thought were attractive in our program, mention dates he'd been on, ask my advice about whether he should text someone back. I couldn't figure out if he was oblivious or if I was projecting, seeing signs that weren't there because I wanted them to be. About 6 weeks in, we had our first real study session. Midterms were coming up, and I'd been genuinely struggling with one concept, multivariate regression, the only thing all semester that had actually confused me. Marcus noticed immediately, said, "Wait, you actually don't get this one, do you?" And I admitted for the first time that, no, I really didn't. Something shifted in his expression, a softness I hadn't seen before. He spent 2 hours walking me through it, patient and thorough, using examples from baseball statistics, because he'd remembered me mentioning I used to play. When I finally understood it, when the numbers clicked into place, I looked up and he was watching me with this expression I couldn't name. Pride, maybe, or something deeper. "There it is," he said quietly. "I knew you'd get it. You're so much smarter than you give yourself credit for." I wanted to tell him that I'd been lying, that I'd understood almost everything else, that I'd been using statistics as an excuse to keep him coming back. But the words stuck in my throat, and instead I just said thank you, and we moved on to derivatives, which I definitely didn't need help with. The weather turned cold in November, proper cold, the kind where you could see your breath indoors if your heating wasn't great, and mine wasn't. Marcus started bringing blankets, thick fleece ones from his apartment. We'd wrap up together on my bed, textbooks balanced on our laps, shoulders pressed together for warmth. It felt domestic in a way that made my chest ache. I'd catch myself imagining this was just our life, that he lived here, that this closeness was ordinary instead of this careful dance we were doing around something neither of us would name. One night, he fell asleep. We'd been reviewing probability distributions, his voice getting slower and softer, and then suddenly his head was on my shoulder and his breathing had evened out. I sat there frozen, afraid to move, afraid to break whatever spell had allowed this to happen. I could feel his heartbeat through his sweater, steady and strong. My arm was going numb, but I didn't care. I would have sat there all night if he'd let me. After about 20 minutes, he stirred, lifted his head, blinked at me with sleepy confusion. "Sorry," he mumbled. "Didn't mean to crash on you." But he didn't move away, not right away. We stayed there, looking at each other in the dim light from my desk lamp, and I thought, this is it. This is the moment. But then his phone buzzed, and the spell broke, and he was gathering his things and saying he should go, early class tomorrow. After he left, I lay in bed where we'd been sitting, pulling the blanket he'd brought around myself, breathing in the cedar wood smell he'd left behind. I was in so deep, I realized, completely gone for someone who probably just saw me as a friend, a study partner, someone to pass time with between real relationships. I decided to tell him. Not about the tutoring lie, that seemed too small and too large at the same time, but about how I felt. I'd do it after the final exam, I told myself, after the semester ended and we didn't have statistics as an excuse anymore. I'd be honest, lay it all out, and if he didn't feel the same way, at least I'd know. At least I could stop living in this agonizing limbo. The night before the final, Marcus showed up with pizza and beer, said we were taking the night off from studying. "You're going to ace this thing," he said. "You don't need me drilling you on formulas. Let's just hang out." So we did. We ate pizza, drank beer, watched a movie on my laptop. It felt different from our usual nights, looser somehow, like we'd both decided to stop pretending this was about academics. He stretched out on my bed, and I sat next to him, our thighs touching, and it felt significant in a way I couldn't articulate. Halfway through the movie, he said, "Can I ask you something?" My heart started racing. I paused the movie, turned to face him. "Yeah, of course." He was quiet for a moment, picking at the label on his beer bottle. "Why did you say yes? That first night, when I offered to help you study? You didn't really need help, did you?" I felt my face flush hot. "What? No, I definitely needed help. You saw me struggling with regression, with probability, with one concept," he interrupted gently. 6 weeks in, you struggled with one concept, but you've been getting A's on everything. I checked the grade distribution. You're in the top 5% of the class." He set his beer down, turned to face me fully. "So why did you say yes?" I could have kept lying. Should have, probably. But something about the way he was looking at me, open and vulnerable and waiting, made the truth spill out. "I wanted to spend time with you," I said quietly. "I wanted you in my space. I wanted to know what you smelled like up close, what you looked like when you were concentrating, what your laugh sounded like without 20 other people drowning it out. I wanted to know you, and statistics seemed like an acceptable excuse." The silence that followed felt infinite. Marcus didn't move, didn't speak, just watched me with those dark eyes that had been haunting my dreams for months. I was about to apologize, to backtrack, to laugh it off as a joke, when he said, "I knew. Not at first, but pretty quickly. You'd explain things back to me in a way that showed you completely understood them, then 5 minutes later act confused about the same concept. You're a terrible actor. Then why did you keep coming?" The question came out barely above a whisper. He smiled, soft and a little sad. "Same reason you kept saying yes. I wanted to be here. I wanted this." He gestured between us at the small space we'd created together. Every Monday and Thursday, sometimes Wednesday and Friday too, I'd make up excuses to come over. I'd spend hours thinking about what food to bring, what stories to tell you, how to make you laugh. I'd go home and lie in bed, replaying every moment, every time you smiled at me, every time our hands brushed over a textbook. Marcus, I started, but he wasn't done. I've never done this before, he said. Been into a guy, I mean. I've spent the whole semester trying to figure out what this was, what you were to me. Those girls I mentioned, those dates, I was trying to convince myself this was just friendship, that I was misreading signals. But then you'd look at me a certain way, or laugh at something I said, and I'd know I wasn't misreading anything. I was just scared. Are you still scared? I asked. He considered this, then nodded. Terrified. But I'm more scared of finishing this semester and losing this, losing you, losing these nights. I'm more scared of not knowing what could happen if we stopped pretending we're just study buddies. I don't remember moving, but suddenly we were closer, my hand on his chest, his fingers curled in my shirt. I don't want to pretend anymore, I said. I'm tired of pretending. Me too, he breathed, and then he was kissing me, soft and tentative at first, then deeper when I kissed him back. He tasted like beer and possibility, and his hands in my hair felt like coming home. We broke apart, foreheads pressed together, breathing hard. That was, he started. Overdue, I finished, and he laughed, the sound bright and relieved. We didn't watch the rest of the movie. We lay there instead, wrapped around each other, talking in whispers even though we didn't need to, like we were afraid to break the spell. He told me about realizing he was attracted to me during the second week, how he'd gone home and had a small crisis about it. I told him about buying the candle, about changing my shirt twice before he came over, about lying awake after he fell asleep on my shoulder. We laughed at ourselves, at how obvious we'd both been, at how much time we'd wasted being scared. When he finally left around 3 a.m, he kissed me at the door, long and sweet. Good luck on the final tomorrow, he said. Not that you need it. You too, I said. Thanks for all the help this semester. He grinned. Anytime. Though maybe next semester we can skip the pretense and just call it what it is. What's that? Dating, he said simply. I want to date you, officially. No textbooks required. I kissed him again, couldn't help myself. I'd like that. I aced the final, obviously. So did Marcus. We got coffee after, compared answers, laughed about how we'd spent a whole semester studying together for a class we both understood perfectly. So what do we do now? I asked. No more statistics to bring us together. Marcus reached across the table, laced his fingers through mine. I'm taking econometrics next semester. I hear it's really hard. I might need a study buddy. I squeezed his hand, grinning. I'm terrible at economics. You'll definitely have to help me. Liar, he said fondly. But I'll come over anyway. 4 nights a week? Make it 5, I said. We've got a lot of time to make up for. 6 months later, we're still studying together, though we've dropped the pretense entirely. He keeps clothes at my place now, a toothbrush in my bathroom, his favorite coffee mug in my cabinet. We still sit on my bed with textbooks spread around us, but now we do it honestly, helping each other with concepts we actually don't understand, celebrating breakthroughs with kisses instead of careful distance. Jake says he's never seen me happier. And he's right. I didn't need a tutor that semester, didn't need help with statistics, but I needed Marcus, needed those nights together, needed the excuse to let him into my life until he became part of it. Sometimes the best things come disguised as something else entirely, and sometimes you have to pretend not to know something just to learn what really matters.